Stan was looking for additional crew, and I had said, well, you know, Tom and John, I worked at Makeup Effects Labs. I mean, those guys are really good. They're mold makers. We get along great. We all have the same tastes and things and the same kind of drive. And I mean, everybody's a little different. Everyone has their own personality, but as a chocolate sundae, you know, you got to have a bunch of flavors to it. You know what I mean? It has to work like that. And so he brought those guys on, and then we found out that it was called The Terminator, and it was like, the script was amazing, and the sketches that Jim Cameron, you know, brought over. And I remember Jim Cameron from Battle Beyond the Stars when I was at Makeup Effects Labs. He was, you know, there were moments over there, and everyone was talking about these glass arms and this guy and Jim, and like, so he was kind of like a guy that I'd heard about, you know. And Alec Gillis was not working at Stan's at the time, but he and I were still friends, and he knew Jim, and again, like that whole vortex of connection, you know, like that moment in history. And then the real work began, you know. Everybody, you know, you could visibly and physically feel everybody stepping up to another level of what it needed to be. Because Blade Runner had come out, The Thing had come out, American Werewolf had come out. So during that period of time, like, you know, everybody wanted to, like, you know, do something else like that, right? And it harkens back to when I was a kid, thinking, if I'm going to go to Hollywood, I want to make a classic just like Karloff's Frankenstein or The Creature from the Black Lagoon or something. Like, that's the goal. If you can't make a classic, then don't do it. You know, I was a snob about it. I'll be honest. I was a complete snob about it. I wasn't going to do dopey things. I wanted to do the coolest, greatest thing. And I think The Terminator, collectively, we all worked on the whole thing within the robot and the design of the makeups and how the makeups were internal camera effects and makeup effects and magic tricks of sorts. And Jim and Stan were great collaborators on how to do crossover from this effect to that effect. And Stan really convinced Jim that a lot of the robot could be full in-camera effects. Not all of it needed to be stop motion. Being so close with Jim and Stan and being in that sort of sphere, that was my film school. I would consider that Terminator was like 8 years of concentrated film school in one 5-month period. Because every lesson I've learned from that film until today has pretty much been retained. The techniques have changed, but not the drive, the story construct. You know, there's a lot about that movie that's really great for a little $6 million film. But that was really, you know, I was 20, I think, so it was like, that to me is, I was lucky enough to work on my own college thesis. The film wrapped, and Stan kept us on for a couple of small things. Then we got this film that went to Montreal, and as we were in Montreal doing this film called The Frankenstein Factor or something like that, The Vindicator, Terminator was being edited and put together and worked and so on and so on. And at some point we all went to, when we either when we got back, but I remember we all went to a screening at the Alfred Hitchcock Theater in Universal, and the producers of Alien were there with Jim and Stan and all of us. It was like 6 of us. And they screened The Terminator, and that was the first time I'd seen it. I didn't see it with an audience. I saw it in this screening. And at the end, perhaps David Giler, I think, one of the producers of Alien, the original Alien, and some other people from Fox were there, and Jim, they left, and Jim said, well, how would you guys like to go to England and do Aliens? And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah, let's go. No, let's not do it. Yeah, let's go. But that was like, you realize you're on the inside. Like, I'd gone from this ridiculous outsider stepping over bums, going to school and, you know, taking buses, to being on the inside of a major screening to get another major film. And I thought, wow, this is like a highlight. That's like a moment to remember. you've made it, kid. You're on the inside scoop. I think that the very first memory would be, I mean, if you're really going to go back and, hypnotherapy back to the beginning of, would probably be illustrations from fairy tale books as when you're a really young child that are kind of like interesting and creepy and kind of fun. And then I do recall being I must have been very young because of the house that I remember we were at, which was showing King Kong. So King Kong, on TV is a black and white. Those startling images were really. I mean, as a child, you think it's real. You think that's just a real event, like a giant ape and that was just that really stuck. And then I do recall being fascinated by, the artwork of the covers of famous monsters magazines and being compelled to kind of like want to have those and learn about what that was. And so from about 8 or 9 years old, I had a definite fascination with I didn't really know what it was at the time. It's just like if it had a monster or a creature in it, like I was kind of fascinated by it. And then you start to see the films, and in those days they would show them just on television randomly. You had to find it. And I do remember seeing Frankenstein, again in black and white, at a young age, and just being completely enthralled by the story and the performance. And then I wanted to know more about it and how these things were made. And so then you start to realize, well, there are people that do this for a living. I don't know what a director is, but his name is James Whale, and I don't know where England is, but there's an English actor named Boris Karloff, whose real name was William Henry Pratt. When you're 9, you really, especially back in the mid-70s, like you kind of don't really know where anything is or where Hollywood is, or you're just very living in your own little house and doing your own thing. So those were the first sort of grounded memories that I have, and I can still remember, actually. I can actually still remember those. Sketching, drawing, and all of that, in looking back, was from day one. My mom and dad kept drawings and little stories and drawings that you do, and you can see that there's an interest and there's some composition and there's some, it's untrained at that point, but it's like the need to do something, just kind of work something out and do you've got book reports when you're in 3rd grade of Lincoln, and you've got some drawing of Lincoln that's you just thought was the coolest thing in the world, and you just kind of utilize that. And my mom was an artist, and she taught things, and then you have art in school, and you just have a natural, there was kind of a natural aptitude, I suppose, but it needed to be finessed and trained, and you art teachers work with you, and then in the meantime, strictly out of curiosity and boredom and everything else, you try to replicate the monsters that you like by, finding clay, finding out what clay is, and you have to kind of push it around and move it and kind of shape it to what you want it to be, and then it was a very natural. It was my obsession. Of course, I had homework and I had the things I had to do, but I was always constantly thinking, like in between, the Revolutionary War, like, oh, how do you make teeth? Like, how do you make teeth? Shane, what was the answer to that question? I think it's fangs. F. I was really distracted as a kid. I was really horribly distracted. And I would have, I do remember this too, I would have like famous monsters magazines in between my school books, and I'd be like, how does Roddy McDowell turn into that ape? What's 7 times 48? foam rubber. I mean, I was just such a mess. I was a complete goon, you know. But that's the thing that kind of like makes you think like, well, I really have no alternative in life. I can either, you know, bag groceries or I can be an artist and do, you know, there was really no, I didn't think of anything else. That was really the drift and the way to go. And so I started going to, again, pre-internet, there was nothing like your school that exists worldwide at all. I mean, nothing where you could just watch a lesson about how to do from start to finish and just, voila, that's how you do it. You know, it was like you'd get little snippets of a behind-the-scenes thing about John Chambers or a little short about Dick Smith, and it was all kind of like, you know, wool gathering of trying to get pieces of things and put it together. And there were books. Richard Corson, I think, had 5 stage makeup books that I had constantly checked out of the local library. I practically owned them. I would always take them back and get them like redone, but it was like then you start experimenting on your brothers and your sisters and your friends and making absolute messes of all of their faces and there was this substance called moulage, and it wasn't, I was trying to figure out how to make like a plaster bust of my face, and my art teacher gave me this weird compound that was called moulage, and he said you heat it in a double boiler and it's reusable, it's gelatinous, and you put it on, and then you put it on your face and it cools down, and then you put some plaster bandage over that, or plaster, and then pop the whole thing off, and I thought, yeah, it's perfect, I can do all of that. So I took it back and I got a hot plate and I got one of my mom's cooking utensils, and I had my little brother and Chris, and I was like, okay, now when it gets molten, like, and it's really hot and it's bubbling, right? We stir it and it looks like, when it's really hot, I'm going to put these straws in my nose, and you just take the rubber spatula and just put it on my face everywhere. Just cover my face with it. And he's like, okay. And so the time came. I'm like, this is it. This is my crowning achievement. I'm making a face cast. And he takes it out, and it's about 300 degrees. And he goes, "Wah!" And it was like immediately like Phantom of the Opera. I was like, ah! I was screaming, and I kicked the thing over, and my hand burned, and I touched him, and he screamed, and we were all like scalded to death, and like big pieces of skin came off my face, and the next day we tried it again after I'd gone to the hospital. I didn't go to the hospital actually, but I go, okay, that was a little too hot. Okay, trial and error, right? Lesson learned. Test the moulage before you just like splash it onto your face. It was the hottest thing. It was like taking radioactive cake frosting and smearing it. It just went every which way and burned for like an hour. But so the next day I tried it again and we got it. And we got it on. And then I said, okay, now you have to put the plaster bandage. And I realized I hadn't really thoroughly explained to him like how that part got on. So then he was kind of figuring out how to do it, and he kind of got this gloppy stuff on, and I was nearly suffocated, but I finally like popped it off, and I was like, there it is, there's a face cast. And I poured it up, and it was like one of those proud moments in your basement as a kid, like, I actually, you know, I did it. Look, there it is, you know, and the scars healed up after a few years, and my eyebrows grew back, and it was okay. But but that's a true story. And then later on in high school, I was commissioned to do I'd built a reputation around the local theaters, and because I figured that was a good place to train, because I'd read about it in some book, like go to the local theater and tell them you want to do the makeup for their shows, whatever they are. It's like, you know, there's period shows, there's dramas, there's all sorts of things, and it'll be a good training for you to like learn how to deal with people and learn how to, like, you know, there's the cranky actor, there's the town boozer, and, you know, you have all these kind of personalities you have to deal with, and problem solving. You know, someone needs a bald cap, and you know, at 16 and 17, 15, 16, 17 through high school, that was actually really good training to do, like live theater and be there every night, and how to do the hair work and how to do. But there's a ghost in Fiddler on the Roof, like a dead woman. She comes back. Do you know the scene I'm talking about?
Frumacera.
Huh?
Frumacera.
Frumacera, that's right. And so I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to do sort of like a special effect kind of makeup. So I did a glow-in-the-dark skull makeup. I'd gotten out of a Dick Smith handbook that kind of like, I just really wanted to do that. So I put like muslin gauze over her skull eyes so you couldn't see her eyes, and then it was a glow-in-the-dark kind of skull makeup with big teeth. And then I thought it was very clever. I got rubber gloves and painted them black and put bones on both sides, right? And then I had this stage guys put a million, black lights above the lights. So when she came in, and she had a white gown on, when she came in, it just looked like disconnected kind of fingers, and she looked really creepy, and that was great. And I would always run out and stand in the back of the audience and kind of watch, like, here she comes, and people would, the visible reaction was kind of like, what is that? Like, people would freak out, and I thought that's really fun to create something that visibly shakes somebody up a little bit. And I think that's the essence of like a good special effect or a good makeup or any kind of like the entertainment of what good makeup or good effects are, and a few years later when I met Stan, it was like he was the same kid as I was. It was like he would tell me about making himself up as a werewolf or doing stage plays. And I realized like we had such, like most people that do this kind of thing have the same background. We had like the same kind of joy of kind of watching your stuff kind of affect people in a certain way, whether it's at Frumacera or it's, eventually the T-Rex scaring the living hell out of kids. It's the same thing. Nothing really changes. It's just, one cost $32 and one cost, X amount of big budget extravaganza. But it's the same idea. It's the same spirit of the thing, really. Well, I remember at around 15 in high school, the counselors had said, what college do you want? You start planning for colleges, and what do you want to do with your life? Where do you want to go? And I said, well, I really want to just move to Hollywood and try to make creatures and monsters. And they thought it was kind of one of those like, I'm sorry, what was that? No, I'm going to go to Hollywood. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to cut people's heads off, and I'm going to put moulage on them. I mean, they just didn't know what the hell I was talking about at all. But I had a counselor that was like, okay, well, let me look around. And he actually did a lot of research, and I give him great credit that he found a school out here in Hollywood that was a prosthetic specialty, art school. So from 15 till graduation, I had planned and started planning, and everyone knew I was going to make the trip. Like the following summer after graduation, I would, fly out and interview and start training, and it was very unorthodox. It wasn't the way to go. Now, I had been offered to, in Michigan, there was a design school called Kendall, and my art teacher, one of the other connections I had was, the art teacher I had his name was Thomas Blinn, and his son was working for George Lucas up at ILM. And Peter or James Blinn, I can't remember. One of the guys was at Jet Propulsion Lab out here in Pasadena. One was up in working with Joe Johnston and the guys on Star Wars films. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like that's what I want to do, so. It didn't seem far-fetched, and he taught my art teacher in high school taught me a lot about two-part mold making and latex casting and doing all that kind of interesting stuff as well, like during that time, which was kind of fascinating when I think about it. And the only thing that was kind of weird and embarrassing was that at graduation they have like an awards ceremony, where all the kids are there, and Mr. Blinn got up and he's like, and the award for outstanding rubber molds goes to Shane Mahan. And I was like, and everyone was like baffled, like, what is, and I kind of walked down and it was like one person kind of going like, what, rubber mold, what did they just say? What did he just say? I would like to thank you for my rubber mold certificate. Thank you very much. It was like the longest walk back to the seat of all time, but it was like, it was very touching. It was very sweet that he actually did a hand calligraphied little award, which I have to this day. You know, it's a treasure to me. It's like really great. But yeah, that was my life, and I was asked to leave my small town. There was like, again, there wasn't a, you know, the internet didn't exist. It was just like pounding the pavements and reading books and meeting people, and it was a hands-on sort of approach. And while you're there, although it was kind of shocking because I had never seen a homeless person before, and I was like, what do you do with them? Do you give them food, or you just walk around them? What do you do with these homeless? I'd never really seen a homeless person. It was baffling to me, but pretty fascinating time when I think back on it. But I did meet, as the course of the story goes along and you meet people that are important, you meet people that say, well, look, I think you should go and talk with these guys over at this studio and ask about an apprenticeship because I think it could be beneficial. You know, you've learned a lot here and there's stuff, but in the meantime, go hang out at these studios that are actually physically working and kind of like, I was like, wow, that's a great idea, you know? So you get up at 6 in the morning and you take 5 buses to the valley and you know, I started apprenticing at a place called Makeup Effects Labs, and I met a guy named Alan Apone. And there was Alan Apone and Doug White and Kenny Myers, and there was just kind of this little hub of activity. It was really great because it was like they take it, you know, you see it the step further. Of course, there's class and practice and there's all of that, and then there's like the actual practicality of like seeing like the hubbub of like guys building fantastic stuff and mechanical things, and you know your head's about to explode. So I would keep going to keep going to school, and then I met one of the teachers there was a sculpting professor, a portrait sculptor, and he said, look, I think you could benefit by taking one-on-one classes with me for a year. Like, I don't want just, it's not going to happen as fast or as thorough as the school, so I have a studio and here's what, you know. So I did that. I actually spent like a year retraining from kind of like which was one of the best things because it was like going to a proper, the proper techniques of learning how to sculpt. And that was, I think, one of the most beneficial things. So you have the apprenticeships at certain studios, and then you have that kind of training. Then you're hanging out with people like Jim Cagle and Kenny Myers, and they're teaching you things and they're showing you things. And then, oh, by the way, you know, Rick Baker's coming by today to show some stuff, and it was this you know, kind of an amazing time. It was the perfect time to move out and try to do that sort of thing. So then you meet other people like Michael Mills, and he's working for the Westmores. So I would work at night at Westmore's place, and I would work during the day for free, kind of like finding my way. And then eventually I was given a position, and that's where I met Tom Woodruff, and that's where I met John Rosengrant, right? So that you can see like how everybody's stories are kind of merging together. All of this kind of like whirlwind effect of all these guys at the right place at the right time, this vortex of kind of, none of us knew what kind of history we were about to make. Now that's the important thing. Like you're just kind of like thrust into this situation, not even predicting into your mind like what's about to like cosmically kind of explode on the horizon in the next 20 years. One day we had to go over, there was an artist, and we had to go over to Stan Winston's shop and pick up the Jason head, because he sculpted the creature, he sculpted Jason's makeup head, and then the raw clay sculpture was going to be taken to Makeup Effects Labs, and they were going to make a mold on it. So Stan was smart enough back then to just go, pick it up and mold it for me, please. So that's what we did. We went over there, and I went, and I was so, like, we'd gone from makeup effects labs to, like, Stan's place, and Stan's place was, like, this groovy, like medical facility. It was, like, clean, and it was quiet, and there was classical music playing, and Stan was in there mysteriously, like Willy Wonka, sculpting by himself on I found out later it was a Maximilian Schell Phantom of the Opera. And as I'm walking through, the guy I'm with, he says, don't say anything to Stan, don't look at him, don't ask him a question, keep your mouth shut, just we pick up the stuff, we get in, we get out, don't bother the man, don't do a thing. I'm like, all right. Of course. So as I'm walking through, and Stan was just kind of like just waiting for us to get out. It was like a scene from Toy Story. Like I just had to say something. I go, Mr. Winston, is that a new version of Jason? And of course it wasn't. It was Maximilian Schell, Phantom of the Opera, and he just goes, and I just kind of like sheepishly walk out. I'm like, oh, what have I done? What did I say? So I'm in the car, and the guy's like, you're such an idiot. I told you not to say anything. You'll never work for him again. I hope you're happy with yourself. And I was just like, oh. I really felt like, God, why God? Why did I have to say anything? And it was like, it was rather funny actually. But, well, it did kind of look like another version of Jason. I just didn't know what to say. I was just searching for something to say, So, so then we did all that, and then it was just kind of time to move on. And I had a friend that was working at Stan's, and I was like, oh, I'll never work there. Why? Oh, it's a long story. You'll never. You won't believe what I said. I can't remember what I said to him. But anyway, I just felt it was like that's what happens. But anyway, I ended up getting an interview and going to Stan's and getting the job, and he didn't really remember the incident, and everything was fine. Michael Mills was a makeup artist who I'd met at Makeup Effects Labs, and we had become, chummy, and those guys kind of took me under their wing, and they used to do like old age disguise makeups on me to take me out to go to bars and stuff, because I was underage, but I'd be like, I'll have a whiskey soda, like the girl would give it to me, and of course I had like fake mustache coming off by the end of the night, but it was kind of like fun to kind of see how far you could get away with weird disguises and stuff but anyway, Michael called me. He was working at Westmore's, and he said, Stan needs a sculptor for this job he has, and I think you should go and give him a call and set up a time to come. I'm like, oh God, and all I could think of was, it just kept in slow motion repeating in my head, Mr. Winston, is that another, I kept thinking like, oh, he's going to remember me, and it's going to be, all those things go through your head a little bit. So I ended up calling him, and I said I'd like to come by for an interview, and Michael Mills said I should come by. He's like, sure, okay, when can you be here? Come next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. I go, perfect, great. I couldn't believe it. I got the address, I knew where it was supposed to be, and so I called my dad, and I said, Dad, that other place I was telling you about, the Stan Winston place, like that really great place? Well, I have an interview to go there to possibly get a job. And he says, all right, here's what you have to do, and you have to do this. You've got to get a suit and a tie. I'm like, what? You've got to get a suit and a tie with a nice shirt, and you have to get a haircut. And you have to shave, and you got to make sure your fingernails aren't all full of clay and dirty, and get some nice shoes. For the love of God, get some nice shoes that aren't. I'm like, Dad, no one cares out here. Everyone looks. Really, everybody looks like Sid Vicious. That's. he goes, I don't care. I don't care. I will send you, I'm going to send you a jacket, and I'm going to send it to you, and you have to wear it. And put your work in a briefcase to show it. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'm not selling insurance. You know, I was like, but he's like, no, no, you have to do it. You just trust me. I go, okay, okay, okay. So he sends me this jacket from JCPenney's, and it's like corduroy with those big leather buttons, and it's got like those patches on the elbow, and it's got like a clip-on tie, and I get a haircut, and I get some shoes. I'm feeling like such a jerk, and I have like a briefcase. I'm like, ding dong, and I go and I meet Stan, and I'm kind of like, I'm really nervous, and he's looking at my book, and he's flipping through it, and he's like, great. Okay, could you start next Monday? I go, sure. Okay, good. Well, okay, see you Monday, 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock sharp. I'm like, you got it. So I drive off. I'm like, oh my God, I got this job. So I call my dad and my mom. I tell them, like, I'm starting at Stan's Monday, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it is. Some little robot movie. He didn't say what it was. And then years later, or maybe a year later after that, he said to me, he goes, yeah, I looked at your book, and it was all fine. It was all fine. But the only reason I hired you is because you wore a suit and a tie. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, everyone else looked like bums that day. They just came in bum after bum. And he goes, you showed up in a suit and a tie. Your work was in a briefcase. You took the work seriously, so that's how you got the job. So I called my dad and said, thanks, Dad. And that little movie, the little robot movie, was called The Terminator. And it was for 6 months, up to 6 months possibly, with shooting and build. And that turned into, as we know, 25 years. I think it was probably about midway through Aliens that, because that was big. That was a big show. That wasn't like a little show. That was a big responsibility, because you're living up to the first film, which was phenomenal. You're living up to trying to outdo all of Giger's great work, and all the, Alien is a masterpiece. What Ridley Scott and Giger created was a game changer for 20 years. The creature design didn't change from Alien from any other movie for about 15 years. They all looked like some variation of Giger's Alien. Like, it took a long time for that to like dissipate. There was a period where we were all really tired. We were all really fatigued on Aliens, and it was grueling. It's cold. It was long hours. You're filming. There's a lot of, the expectation level from Jim went up a lot because it was no longer a $6 million film. It was like an $18 million film. He had a lot of pressure on him. He had the pressure of a sequel. He had an English crew that he didn't quite jive with, so we were like his American, kind of comfort level a little bit, but he didn't want to get too comfortable with us because he's Jim. But we would see dailies, and I was just seeing like the most astonishing dailies. They were pure, and they were like raw. They were perfect, the Queen, and you'd see stuff you have to cut out, like. But basically, at that point, we all kind of like really gelled as like, where else can you go but, just bigger and better, and that's a little bit of a danger, because you kind of feel like that's the greatest thing. Terminator was great, Aliens was great. Suddenly we were like the new guys on the block. Stan had been around and done a lot of really great stuff, but suddenly, like, as a new entity of Stan, he was like up there now, like way up there, in terms of like a different kind of effects artist. So it was like, that's when we really realized, like, this is a team, this is a home. Leviathan was after Aliens. And Leviathan, we went to Italy, right? And that's the turning point where we lost two of the original, which is Tom and Alec. We came back, it was just Richard and John and myself for a while, right? But we'd met Lindsay in England, and he came over and just started doing a lot of work. And it wasn't until, I think, Terminator 2 when Alan Scott came on. Again, we had no idea that those two partnerships would form in, you know what I mean? You just don't know how it's going to work or how the way of the world is going to happen. But the next phase, of course, Leviathan was a great experience because we went to, lived in Rome, and we were in the Mediterranean, and we went diving. We all took diving lessons, and we had to because we thought we were going to do a lot of underwater puppet work. So, Stan and all of us, and Shannon Shea. Shannon Shea was another one that kind of was a new kind of foundling of what was going on. We all went diving, so it was like this kind of gypsy bond. It was just that's the way it was. And so then let's say we moved into Valjean. It was quiet for a while, and then we did Edward Scissorhands, and Edward Scissorhands was another, in my opinion, another huge watermark in terms of not a big, huge 20-foot monster creature, big, but just a very special, singularly special experience by creating this great German expressionistic character via Tim, via Stan. Crash McCreary had started at that point, so he was another, that's his era. He comes in. So, and at first I'm always a little leery of these guys because you just don't know what they're going to be like, and then you kind of figure out hey, these guys are really great. You form bonds that way, but it's not instantaneous. It takes some time to gain trust and kind of figure out what people are about. And so then you have that kind of the third. It's like the third level of Stan Winston Studio at that point at Valjean. You've got Predator 2, Edward Scissorhands, and then the return of Jim Cameron with Terminator 2. And that changed everything yet again. So it's really basically three out of the major films have been Jim Cameron, and he happens to show up one more time later in the sequence, right? But every time he shows up, it pushes, it's Terminator, it's Aliens, it's Terminator 2. Go ahead, say it, kids.
Avatar!
It's Avatar. Right? Terminator 2 was written at a point where the technology of effects almost couldn't keep up with how it was written. Whereas, and I suppose that's true for every film, because as a writer, you're pushing the boundaries, and we had lots of meetings where Jim would say, "How do we do this? How do we do it?" Weeks and weeks of meetings, and we were part of all those meetings. It could be this, it could be that, it could be let's figure out, okay, blah 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 blah. Taking notes, making experimentation. He had done The Abyss while we were doing Leviathan, so we couldn't do The Abyss, which was one of those unfortunate just timing of the world. We were away and committed. It happens like that. And so the water tentacle, the CGI water tentacle, was kind of a developmental, something new. CGI, computer-generated stuff was how do you make the water tentacle work? And he had done a lot of work with I'm sure it was ILM, right? So in writing Terminator 2, what they were very good at was shiny reflective surfaces. So, okay, the T-1000 then is a shiny reflective guy. Utilize what you have, utilize what's good about the effects. But there was such an advance in prosthetics and puppet and animatronics for Terminator 2, I mean just on a huge scale of hook arms and fingers that grow and more endoskeletons, and then the T-1000 and all of his guises and split heads. And I mean, there was a lot of amazing work and a lot of groundbreaking stuff. And it's a stupendous film. I mean, as a movie, everything just got bigger and cleaner and broader and more exciting. So those two movies just bookend themselves perfectly, you know. The work with ILM on Terminator 2 then bridged it when Jurassic Park came through. Every effects house in the world was trying to get that job. Again, you don't know how you're going to do it. You have no idea how you're supposed to do it, or even you just start to figure it out. It's an empty room with air and tables and chairs, and then by the end of it, it's filled with mechanical dinosaurs, and how you create stuff from nothing is basically the lesson of it all. It comes from someplace, I don't know where, you know. You can't buy a dinosaur. Yeah. I think you do start to feel like you need to be challenged, but it's always, everything's daunting, you know. Like even after, like again, it was like Jurassic Park was a really huge milestone, and then it was a couple of years of our lives intensely, and then it drops off, and the cameras are put away, and the sets are tore down, and the circus leaves, and we're all kind of like in the dust with nothing to do. And I don't know, there must be a technical, psychological word for that, like the letdown of after some great creative moment. There must be some word that I'm not aware of that means you're in that state of artistic depression, I suppose. You know what I mean? Where you just kind of like, you've got no, you know, your drive's been popped and you're relaxed, but you're looking for the next thing. And it took a while. There was quite a few months after Jurassic Park where there was no job, and we started doing commercials because we needed to work. And we did a Billy Idol rock video, and we were like, oh God, it's a chicken commercial. Lobster, and we just did a big, you know, we all were kind of like getting a little too full of ourselves, and it's a humbling experience where you have to go, you're not going to always get the greatest things in the world. You're going to get some great ones, but you need to learn how to make a lobster puppet and put as much effort into that as you did anything else. And then we're like, okay, you know, you find the balance in your psyche again to kind of do that. After Jurassic Park, Francis Ford Coppola had said that he was going to do Dracula, and John and I were like, Stan, it's Dracula. It's Coppola. It's Dracula. We have to do that. And Stan was thinking, he's like, what's in Dracula? A pair of fangs? Because I can't support a studio off a pair of fangs. And we go, but what if there's something else in it? It's like, and so we didn't pursue it. Greg Canham got it, who's a dear friend, and he won the Oscar for it, right? Because it's filled with stuff. It's filled with all sorts of stuff. So when Interview with a Vampire came around, we said, Stan, we didn't do Dracula, which is, it's okay, but here's this book. Neil Jordan, he's directing it, he's writing it, Anne Rice, da-da-da. And Stan says, okay, all right, let me read the book. So he read the book that weekend, and he comes in, he goes, we're doing this movie, we have to do this movie. So we kind of pushed our foot in the door with Neil, and you know, going back to the world of like subtle makeups, and which is really one of Stan's fortes, was makeup work. That was where he started. It was a return to that. It was also one of the first films, you know, John and I and Stan, and I'm sure a few other guys that would chip in and from Story Points would say, no film has done this. No film has shown that. No, so And I said, there's never been a vampire film where the vampire just always has fangs, except in the original Nosferatu and the Werner Herzog remake. But they're like rat teeth, and they're a little bit different from the overall look. But the classic spacing, a lot of times it's like teeth are gone, and then they just suddenly appear, and then they're gone, and that always kind of drove me crazy. I always felt like once you're a vampire, and you have teeth, you know. So our vampires always had teeth, always had contact lenses, and always had fingernails, and they would grow to different levels during their expressions of anger or rage or whatever. But there was a lot of really nice work in the interview. I thought.
Speed.
Yeah.
You go, Rich. Okay. And cut. The client's not going to notice anything. That's the best.
When we found out that Jon Favreau was going to direct Iron Man after Zathura, that he set up a meeting, we got involved with that film. And it was at that point Stan had a fringe of digital artists left. I mean, just a fringe, because the bigger portion of the digital team that was in-house had just moved on, and he was phasing that out. He was phasing it out, right? And that wasn't Digital Domain, that was the in-house Valjean studio. And there were 5 or 6 guys that I knew quite well, I liked a lot, and I thought to myself, and I think we all did. We all thought, let's make a suit in the computer for once. Like, let's make the suit as a digital sculpture over a scan of an actor, and let's rapid prototype out the pieces. Let's make it mechanically perfect, and it had never been done like that before. I think Steve Johnson had done Bicentennial Man with vacuform plastic and doing the best he can with Robin Williams, who's kind of a stocky guy. You know, he's muscular and broad-shouldered, but Iron Man had to be a certain thing. It was a different creature. It was a different character altogether. And then it kind of felt like, in a way, it kind of felt like full circle from Terminator 1, where it was a hand-sculpted, mechanical, you know, revolutionary effect. All those years had gone by, and then it was like the most futuristic, next-generation robotic guy, where you're actually now using what Terminator professed about computers taking over the world, right? You are now using computers taking over the world and making a suit and making it perfect, and trial and error. It was the how-to level, and that was a big highlight, because once we had it out and had it working, and it just looked it just looked great. I thought it looked fantastic, you know. But the look of it, we drove the look of it. We created the first suit, and that's going to be, you know, that was scanned. And the Ironmonger is this huge thing, and that was the biggest robot we had done that at Stan's ever. It was like 10'4", and then shortly after that, Avatar came out, and that robot was 15 feet. So I'm like, geez, you know, there's always something that has to be a little bit bigger. But the Ironmonger was like it was a huge, you know, it was a great thing to do. So that was, for me, that was really great. You never think, especially in such a long run with Stan, you know, year after year after year, 20, 25, 26 years, you just feel like it's going to go on and on blissfully forever, right? You just don't see. But as the saying goes, all good things must come to it. And it's true. There's just, this is the way things happen sometimes. But when he told us he was ill, we were told not to say anything to anybody about it. He was being privy to us, but that was it, because he didn't want business affected by his illness, because he was going to beat it and then be done with it, right? That was the attitude. So that was really all there was to it. There was no other preparation for anything, really. You know what I mean? It was just like, I'm going to beat it. Let's not worry about it, and we just keep going forward. But if I'm, gone a couple weeks here and there, that's why. And that kind of answered some questions, because we'd be like, man, where is he these days? Like there was that kind of like, But beyond that, that was it. I think I had just returned back from, I want to say Berlin or Prague, from doing G.I. Joe, right? It was G.I. Joe in Prague. And, it was you're gutted by it, because the reality of it hit in. Before it was just kind of make-believe, it was like, it's not really going to happen. He's sick, but he's going to beat it. You don't really want to believe it, so you don't believe it. You know what I mean? But that was, there's all of that shock and grief and kind of trauma, because you just don't know. You're like, wait a minute. Well, what do I do? Right? What do I do now? Where do I go? After being there for so long, it wasn't like we were all freelance people that were like easily to migrate from this place to that place. That wasn't our lifestyle. That was like, it was it, right? So it was a very difficult transition. We just didn't know. We just didn't have any. And it wasn't just us. It was like a lot of the industry of people that always relied on Stan's studio to have a place of employment, So, and Rick wasn't doing that much anymore. So there was like less and less places to work, So you just figure like, well, let's just work together. That's all that's all we know how to do. Well, I'm just proud that we're still the overall playing ground of doing effects work still. 10 years ago, I was told by many people that this particular branch of our work would probably not exist by big digital companies, right? And that was, 10 years ago, it seemed quite scary that it could possibly be like that, But for us to be able to maintain, to have a place for people to work and to carry on doing what they do is what makes me the most proud, I would say. Not so much anymore like the types of films and all that. We've done a lot of amazing stuff. I think it's just the fact that we still have a place for people I really care about to come to work. That's kind of it. I'm proud of the work we did in Cowboys and Aliens. I'm proud of the work that we did in Real Steel. Those robots are, again, it's another robot show, but it's like those. Of course, the Iron Man movies, the makeups in Thor, I think are really, really phenomenal. The work coming up in Pacific Rim is going to be really, really, really great. And I'm really proud of that. From a technical standpoint, since we have to do things quicker, we don't get months and months to do things. So you have to be technologically pushing it all the time. And we know that that's hard on some people, but it's just also a very productive way to do work, but that's a follow-through from building Iron Man You know what I mean? Using those tools, using that tool set. That's what Stan taught us. It's just another tool, right? You can't be afraid of progress, but it's just another tool. It's still gonna be a great thing at the end. Just push it, just do it. So that's what we have to do. That's what you have to do, and it takes some time to figure that out. You have got to be willing to fall flat on your face and be broke as hell and not expect much from anybody. And if you can get through that, and you can pick yourself up, and you can actually produce stuff that you like and hopefully be successful with it, well, then you're good. If you're into it just to make money, it's not going to ever serve you. I would do it for free if I didn't have bills to pay, and that's a fact. But the world's not set up that way. So you have to be prepared in a very competitive world, and it's pretty scary out there right now for a lot of digital companies, because they're really shrinking down, you know what I mean? So that's why I say I'm proud that we're still here, because, it's almost kind of gone the other way around, where, like, I hate to say, like, some digital big powerhouse companies are faltering. We see it, where they're faltering a little bit, and they're losing it's kind of a frightening aspect, but you have to be prepared for that. You might have a good run for 10 years and it could drop out again. You have to be prepared. So pursuing a life in art is like anything. Any profession is risky, but it's also, I don't think that maybe a person that works in a clerical position someplace is as emotionally involved with what they produce than an artist does. So you also have to figure out, like, you got to have thick skin. You're going to take a lot of criticism. Some people are going to like your work, some people aren't, You're going to get art directed all over the place by every client in the world. You think it's so beautiful, you show it. The nose is a little big and the ears are too small, and you're like, oh, but it was in your head, it was perfect. All right, it doesn't belong to you, So you put as much into it as you can, and you just hope to get out whatever you can get out of it. I hope that makes sense. What I love about what you're doing with the Stan Winston School of Character Arts is because my time at Stan Winston's actual studio, my own brief time, are filled with experiences that now people can kind of see by some of the behind-the-scenes things and the little clips that you show. There's the interviews with people. There's the lessons. I think it's good to share that knowledge for kids. It's much like, me as a 10-year-old going to the library and getting Richard Corson books. There's no difference. If you're searching for something and trying to learn how to do something, it's the perfect place. Now my life would be completely different if that school existed when I first came to Hollywood, right? But that just isn't the way the world works. There was no, fantastic thing where you could kind of sit in your own house and go, wow, it's that, You really have a great resource. It's a great resource to have. Well, what we've got going on here now is basically this is all top. The top portion is basically really smooth. When you wet it up, it looks really glossy and nice. And from different lighting angles, it keeps with the contours, and there aren't any pits. There aren't a lot of pits in the film at all. That's all that's going on now. There's still a lot of other little surface details that may happen. Jim and I are going to have another discussion about different areas and different ideas. But it's coming along.